Here are 10 mysteries involving some very creepy phone messages. In February 1983, John Masegian, a millionaire mortgage executive from Reno, Nevada, was staying at the Fontainebleau Hilton in Miami Beach with his fourth wife, 38-year-old Carol. John was there for a week-long convention, mixing work with vacation. On the morning of February 11th, around 10:30 a.m., Carol headed to the pool, expecting John to join her around noon. When he didn't show, Carol called their room twice, but there was no answer. By 2 p.m., she asked the front desk to let her into the room as she hadn't brought her key. However, John was not there, nor had he left a note. Later, around 6:20 p.m., John's body was found blocking the stairwell door on the 5th floor, just 6 feet from the couple's room. He'd been strangled with a 32-inch nylon cord with wooden knobs at the ends. Investigators concluded that the murder had occurred in their room, somewhere between 10:45 in the morning and 1:15 in the afternoon. John's body had been dragged face down by his boots to the stairwell. While his wallet had been taken, the motive didn't appear to be a robbery. Rather, investigators believed the theft was secondary to the murder. When Carol was informed of her husband's death, she was understandably shocked. Despite having no apparent opportunity to commit the crime herself, Carol fell under suspicion due to a strange phone message she had received at 10:45 in the morning the previous day. The message, taken by a hotel operator, stated, "Dick and Jeannie will be arriving in Miami tomorrow at 12:30. Carol was questioned by police and given a polygraph test, which she passed, suggesting she was telling the truth. Carol and 5 of John's children later sued the hotel, alleging inadequate security had led to John's death. They sought $1 million, but the jury sided with the hotel. Carol ultimately received $857 per month from John's workers' compensation and $140,000 from the settlement of his estate. To date, no one has ever been charged with John Masegian's murder. In the minutes leading up to midnight, on May 18th, 2001, 24-year-old Segun Farquharson was in the back seat of a car with 3 other men in it. The car was parked in a housing complex near his home in Toronto, Canada. Either by accident or on purpose, Farquharson called his own voicemail. Over the next 2 minutes, it recorded the conversation between Farquharson and the 3 men. The man in the front passenger seat was his friend. But the other 2 men believed that Farquharson was carrying a lot of money, and they wanted it. Apparently, the man in the back seat with Farquharson was brandishing a gun. Farquharson said that he didn't have any money on him, but he could get money if they wanted it. As the man in the back seat threatened him, Farquharson pleaded for his life. Then the voicemail cut off as it reached its 2-minute warning. At 12:01 a.m., minutes after the voicemail was recorded, a call came into 911 to report gunshots. Police and emergency workers responded to the scene and found Farquharson dead, shot once in the back. Hoping for leads, the police released the voicemail. Unfortunately, no one was willing to testify, and the crime remains unsolved.
in house and they're trying to hurt me. I need help. That call the ambulance, please.
In early 2015, 28-year-old Nara Pech from Edmonton, Canada, was traveling through Southeast Asia with friends. They first arrived in Cambodia, the homeland of Pech's parents, where, years before, his parents had fled from the Khmer Rouge. By 1986, they ended up in Edmonton, where Pech was born. After visiting Cambodia, Pech and his friends went to Thailand, and then on to Laos. By this point in the trip, Pech was feeling homesick and decided to head home. He spent the night with his friends in Vientiane, the capital city of Laos. Then, his friends went with him to the airport and watched him clear customs. After that, Pech made 3 phone calls, one to his parents, one to his fiance's parents, and one to a friend. But he got each person's voicemail. In each message, Pech said that he was having problems boarding and that they had taken away his boarding pass. He said that they had accused him of saying something bad about Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen, and that the situation was getting bad. Sadly, those distressed messages were the last time that any of Pech's friends and family heard from him. According to the Laotian government, Pech committed suicide in the airport. A private autopsy was performed in Thailand. It showed that Pech had many wounds, including a stab wound to the right side of his chest that had lacerated his lung. His neck had also been stabbed multiple times, and he had been stabbed once in his right arm. Finally, there were multiple cuts on his left hand and arm and contusions on both of his hands and his right knee. Due to the gruesome nature of his death, the disturbing voicemails, and the fact that Pech had no history of mental illness, his family believes that he met with foul play, likely at the hands of the Laotian police. It was October 25th, 1999, and 2 friends had been in contact throughout the day with 41-year-old Albert Challam. But by 8:30 p.m., he had stopped answering his phone. By 1:30 in the morning, the friends decided they would head over to the mansion in Colts Neck Township, New Jersey, where Challam lived. Inside, they were shocked to find the dead bodies of Challam and his fellow penny stockbroker, 37-year-old Meyer Lehman. The victims were lying face down on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood. Challam had been shot once in the chest and 5 times in the neck and head. Lehman had been shot once in the leg and 3 times in the head. It had all the earmarks of a mob hit, and both Challam and Lehman had a long history of shady business deals. During this period, they ran a website that advertised high-risk, low-price stocks known as penny stocks. Penny stock investors are often victims of pump-and-dump schemes. At the time of the murders, the authorities were looking into mob connections with penny stocks. The double murder had all the hallmarks of a mob hit. However, it is unclear who was behind it, as the men had ties to both American and Russian mafia. One possible clue is a voicemail found on Challam's answering machine. The call was made around the time of the murders, and the message simply said, "Call me back. Emergency." Police speculated that the caller knew that the murderers were on their way to execute Challam and Lehman. Joe Logan, an associate of the 2 victims, may have known the caller's identity. Logan was one of the two friends in contact with Challam on the day of his murder. Logan was also one of the people who found the bodies. Weeks earlier, Russian mobsters Boris and Michael Vax had visited Logan at his office to talk about Challam. After the meeting, Challam punched Logan in the face. Police believe that Logan may have lost the Russians' money and blamed Challam, and that Challam found out about it. Logan was brought in front of a grand jury, but refused to testify. To date, the two murders remain unsolved. On December 26, 1985, 28-year-old Deborah Wolfe called her mother to say that she was leaving the Veterans Administration Medical Center in Cumberland County, North Carolina. Deborah had been working there for 18 months as a registered nurse. When she didn't show up for work the next day, her friends and family started searching for her. After finding no trace of her, they called the police. 2 days after being notified, which was 5 days since anyone had heard from Wolfe, the police finally started looking into her disappearance. Around the same time, Wolfe's friends, who were experienced scuba divers, searched the pond near her house. In less than 5 feet of water, they found Wolfe's body stuffed into a barrel. An autopsy was performed, and it was determined that Wolfe had drowned. An odd conclusion, since apparently her body was found inside a barrel in the pond. The coroner's report found no signs of foul play, and the death was ruled an accident. Authorities believe that Wolfe was walking her dogs and simply fell into the pond. The police denied that there was a barrel, even though the person who found the body swears he saw the body in a barrel. Wolfe's mother said that there was a barrel on Wolfe's property that was missing. There was even an indentation in the ground where the barrel had been. Perhaps even more odd, Wolfe was wearing clothes that her mother and stepfather didn't recognize. And the clothes were all the wrong sizes. Another possible clue was a phone message found on Wolfe's answering machine. The message, recorded the first morning that Wolfe was missing, was from a man at the medical center where Wolfe worked. He said that he was calling to check on Wolfe because she had missed a few days of work. But Wolfe had only missed work after she went missing. Wolfe's mother believes that the caller, a volunteer at the hospital, was the murderer. The unidentified man wanted to become romantically involved with Wolfe, but she had turned him down. The police investigated the man. He provided an alibi, but declined to take a polygraph. A few days after Wolfe's death was made public, the man moved out of state. The police felt no need to follow up with him. Due to a lack of evidence, the police are unsure if Wolfe's death was a suicide, an accident, or a murder. And unless some new evidence is found, the case remains unresolved. In the early morning hours of September 6th, 2015, 32-year-old Henry McCabe was at a club in Spring Lake Park, Minnesota. His friend William Kennedy said that he was going to drive McCabe to his home in Mounds View. But instead, McCabe wanted to be dropped off at a gas station in the nearby city of Fridley, which is in the opposite direction of Mounds View. When McCabe didn't show up for work the next day, the police were contacted, and search teams scoured the area. The police looked into Kennedy's story, but they couldn't find surveillance footage of Kennedy at the gas station. Kennedy said that it may have been a different gas station, so police checked surveillance videos from nearby service stations. None of them had footage of Kennedy's car or McCabe. One clue in the disappearance was McCabe's cell phone. He made 3 calls after being dropped off. One call pinged off a tower in Fridley, but his last call pinged off a tower in New Brighton, a city that is 7 miles away from Fridley, where he had supposedly been dropped off. That last call went to the voicemail of McCabe's wife at 2:28 in the morning. The 2-minute voicemail is mostly bizarre, with growling noises, moaning, and screams. Here's a sample of it. There's a lot of silence, and then, just before the voicemail ends, someone says, "Stop it." On November 2nd, 2015, a kayaker found McCabe's body floating in Rush Lake in New Brighton. An autopsy was performed, and it appeared that McCabe had drowned. The police say the death is still an open investigation. They are unsure if McCabe committed suicide or if he was somehow the victim of foul play. On the afternoon of December 1st, 2006, Maria de Fatima Ramos Dossantos was waiting for a bus in Fort Myers, Florida, with her friend and her 3-week-old son, Bryan. As they were waiting, a Hispanic woman in a black 2-door Ford Explorer SUV pulled alongside them and asked for directions to Pine Manor. Maria and her friend talked to the woman until the bus came. Then Maria and her friend boarded the bus. The woman in the SUV followed them. Once they got off the bus, the woman pulled up beside them again. The woman said she was completely lost. She offered to give Maria and her friend money if they would get in the car and help her find where she was going. They agreed and got into the SUV. Once inside, Maria noticed that it was equipped with a car seat and that the woman had a diaper bag. After a few minutes of driving, the woman took out a knife and ordered Maria and her friend out of the car. Obeying the armed woman, they got out. The car took off with baby Bryan still inside, never to be seen again. Before pulling the knife, the kidnapper used Maria's cell phone to call a local business. She left a message saying that someone was directing her toward Pine Manor and talked for about 30 seconds. The FBI tracked the call and got a copy of the voicemail from the business.
Las muchachas me llevan para aquí en la, ahorita te voy a decir, se llama la Cleveland Avenue. Sí, pero es que ellas dicen que hay otros calles que se llaman así. Entonces solo Pine Manor, entro ahí en Pine Manor, calle 11. Oh, ok. Pero tú en cuánto tiempo llegas? Porque tengo que regresar a las muchachas. Ok. Yo te llamo para atrás, ok? Bye-bye.
The police and the FBI believe that Bryan was either taken by a woman who wanted her own baby or by human smugglers. Maria and her husband had owed money to human smugglers for recently transporting them from Brazil to the US. But they do not think that smugglers would kidnap a baby over such a small debt. Bryan's disappearance remains unsolved, and his kidnapper has never been identified. One of the most terrifying, unidentified serial killers in US history is the original Night Stalker, aka the Golden State Killer, who is not to be confused with the other Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. Active between 1979 and 1986 in Southern California, the original Night Stalker was described as an athletic white male in his 20s who killed at least 10 people. His modus operandi was to break into a house where a woman or a couple lived and tie them up with rope. Although he shot one couple, he beat the rest of them to death. All the women were sexually assaulted. Then, for no apparent reason, he stopped killing after May 1986. In 2001, DNA tests showed that the original Night Stalker and a terrifying serial rapist called the East Area Rapist were the same person. The East Area Rapist was responsible for at least 40 assaults between June 1976 and July 1979, just before the original Night Stalker began his spree. After breaking into a house, he would bind both victims using an unusual diamond knot. Then he would sexually assault the wife while the husband watched. He even played sadistic games, like balancing plates on the man's back and threatening to murder the couple if one of the plates broke. He also had a habit of calling his victims before and after the crimes. Many survivors said that they received calls from a wrong number before the attacks. The police believe that this was the original Night Stalker's way of determining if the victims were home. So the police set up wiretaps. They captured a male caller asking, "Is Ray there?" Other times, he would call after the attack to threaten his rape victims. One of these calls went to a victim's answering machine. In the message, the caller breathes heavily before repeatedly whispering, "Gonna kill you." Here is a sample of one of the recordings. In 2001, DNA evidence linked the Night Stalker to a previous series of rapes. But it wasn't until 2018, over 40 years after the Reign of Terror began, that Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. was finally unmasked as the Golden State Killer. On Valentine's Day 2014, Christina Fields of Colorado Springs got the most heartbreaking news anyone could receive. Her 13-year-old son, Luie, had hanged himself with his belt in his school's bathroom just after lunch. Immediately, everyone thought that it was suicide and that Luie had been bullied. Christina was obviously devastated by the news. But the more she thought about it, the less it made sense. She noted, for example, that on the previous night, Luie had been grounded and told not to move while he sat at the dinner table. His family even recorded him with a camera. As soon as no one was watching, he would act silly. She maintains that this was not behavior consistent with someone who would take their own life less than 24 hours later. After his death, Christina was going through her voicemail and noticed a message from Luie on January 14th, 1 month before his untimely death.
I can hear him panting in the beginning of the voicemail, the same way you see them on YouTube with the step-by-step videos and the friends playing it together.
This led Christina to believe that Luie died playing the choking game, a popular and incredibly dangerous activity among children and teens, where they purposely choke themselves or their friends to get a brief high. The school officials maintained that the choking game was not being played at the school. But Christina believes that they are in denial and that her son died as a result of the game. It was May 18th, 2003, when a boy suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the middle of a busy East Bakersfield intersection. No one in the neighborhood recognized the child, so the police were called. They quickly realized that the boy had been abandoned. He only spoke Spanish, and the police thought that the boy called himself Mateo. Unlike many children who are abandoned, Mateo was wearing new, clean clothes, and his hair was freshly cut. He was healthy and well-fed. But Mateo didn't know where he lived. He said that he was 2 years old, that he had 2 brothers and a dog, and that his mother's name was Xochitl. News that the boy had been found reached international audiences in the hopes that someone would come forward with knowledge about the child. On May 23rd, 5 days after Mateo was found, a voicemail was left for the lead detective on the case. The woman claimed to be the mother of the boy, but she said that his name was Jesus Perez Florez. The confusion about the boy's name occurred because the man who found Jesus was named Mateo. The caller said that she was dying of cancer and that her husband was abusive. She wanted someone to adopt Jesus so that no one would hurt him if anything happened to her. The police were confident that the caller was the mother because she gave some information about the boy that wasn't made public. Nearly a month after Jesus was found, the police released the audio of the message. However, there are no reports of any family members coming forward to claim Jesus, and his origins remain a mystery. These chilling phone messages often serve as haunting reminders of the unsolved cases that continue to baffle investigators and leave victims' families searching for answers. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.